What's up, storyteller? I'm Clark Rowanson, the Magic Engineer, and it's time to talk about magic. In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of the topics I actually covered in one of my live streams, so the format may be a little bit different than you're used to. I sure hope you still enjoy the content, and we're going to jump over to that right now.
So here I wanted to talk about approach vectors, which is something that has come up a variety of ways and a variety of topics and videos that I covered. Any time, especially when we're talking about seed crystals, that's kind of what led me to this. Anytime we're trying to generate a new story or new magic system or new game system, there's we all approach it from different angles. And where you start and the direction you approach it from, that's your approach vector. It is your angle of attack towards creating this thing and doing this thing. So that's the rough definition I have. It may not make a ton of sense yet, but it should as we go through it more. Whenever I approach stories, I'm able to get there through the magic system. And that's generally all I need. And approach vectors and seed crystals really do go hand in hand, because when you have the right approach vector, that's when ideas appear more easily and it's easier to connect things together more easily. And as I think about it, this isn't, I want to say this is the first thing you need, like even before the seed crystal, but it's not really something you need so much as a method and a direction. It's like saying north is what you need. North isn't what you need. What you need is to get to a location, and your best approach is from the north. Like that's what an approach vector is. So it's figuring out your best approach to get to the first thing you need, which is your seed crystal or whatever you're dealing with. It's usually your seed crystal. And for me, when we're dealing with stories, it's a lot like what we were talking about with seed crystals before. Pretty much any of the standard story elements makes a ideal approach vector. So coming at it from the angle of your characters, focusing on your characters first, focusing on plot first, digging into setting first, really looking at your theme and the message you want to send and the arguments you want to make first. Solidifying your genre and the elements of your genre, or in my case, the magic. Like I start with the magic. So before I do everything else, I'm coming from the north, where north is magic systems. So I get the idea of the magic, and I can go straight into my seed crystal. And from my seed crystal, which entirely pivots around the magic, I can then start developing the other aspects of my world, of my story, of my characters, and everything else that I want to do. This doesn't work for everybody. And this, again, there's a lot of reflections here with seed crystals, because so if you have done some seed crystals before, look at the seed crystals you have made, and I'll talk about this more a little bit later, but look at the seed crystals you have made and see if you can find commonalities among them, and that might help you understand your preferred approach vector. But I've talked about this before, not everybody can approach it straight from the magic system. A friend of mine, we had to get the setting developed. I talked about this in the seed crystal video, where Shatona was really struggling with ideas until we came up with the idea of a living desert invading the land, and drew out a little bit of the map and figured out where some interesting things were. And that was what she needed to us then find the seed crystal and move forward. So her angle of approach was from the setting. Another one of my friends, April, when we were working on her stuff, we couldn't make any good progress on pretty much anything. I was just trying to help her with her story in general. We were struggling with characters. We were struggling with doing world building. We were struggling with the magic system. She originally came to me for help with the magic system. none of it was working until we sat down and outlined the 7-point structure for the plot. Because once we had that, she was able to start digging into the following pieces, saying, okay, if this is what is going to happen at the midpoint, I need a location for that to happen. So if this person is going to understand the true scope of the danger they're facing, what is the secret they learn? Where do they learn it? Who's there? What are people doing there? And that led her to developing more of her setting, developing more of her characters. And then as that filled out, we were able to say, what can we put in the magic system that will help enhance, drive, or complicate this plot point? And that's how that entire book went for her, is we had to have those plot points identified first. Other people, they have to have a really good grasp on their character. They need to know what their background is. They need to know what their mental state is, how they're going to respond to different conflicts, different problems, what their traumas are, the character arc they want to go through. They need to have a really crystal clear image of who they are and where they want them to end up. And as they're building that, they will start thinking through, okay, they have trust issues, and I want them to learn about forgiveness. And with that, they can start thinking like, okay, well, what is happening in the world? What is happening in their relationships with other people that A, made them this way, and B, allow me to make them the way I want them to be. And from there, it just kind of spirals from them having a good concept of one of the characters, maybe more of the characters. So genre is a little interesting. That applies more if you are doing some niche genres, because the more specific your genre, the more it tells you about what needs to be in your story. Just saying sci-fi fantasy doesn't really help you, because that can be anything. Saying epic fantasy helps a little bit. Saying, I'm not even sure, but saying epic fantasy steampunk, so epic fantasy in scope and style, but steampunk elements, that helps further. Starting to dig into things like I want to do Lovecraftian horror, that helps a lot, because that's a very specific tone with a bunch of very specific elements. Or if you start saying, yeah, there's romance, I don't want to just do romance, I want to do bully romance, which I still don't get, but it's very popular, and to each their own. But there's bully romance, and then there may be female bully romance, where it's either lesbian couple or it's males where the female is the bully. Like, as you get more specific, it's telling you more about what you need to do, and the easier it's going to be to start spiraling through the other aspects of what you need for your story.
Hey, quick break. Just want to say, if you are enjoying this video, please do take a second to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It helps tremendously. And that's all I've got. So back to the content.
Like I said, for me, I'm starting with the magic. I'm building up interesting quirks and powers and hooks, and then that is leading to how different people are going to use it, the implications it has in the world. Once I know the implications and how it will be used in terms of factions and progress, I can look at individual people. What's their relationship with the magic? How are they able to use it? What does it mean to them? And what complications and problems come from these interactions and these uses? And that starts to lead to plot. Or then I start getting character, and I may build up some plot stuff that's unrelated to the magic, but I'm able to tie it all together. I really, really hope this is making sense, because this is one of those more nebulous ideas I have that I truly believe it's real, but I sometimes have a hard time getting it across. And if none of that has really been working for you, you might actually end up needing to be having a more theme-centric approach vector, which is definitely not how I do it. I'm one of the people that figures out their theme along the way after the fact, if at all. But if you like to know the point you're trying to make with your story, you may want to start with themes. So understanding that you want to tell a story about love conquers all. And again, with themes, anything can be generic. Maybe the point of the theme is the dangers of untested technology, or maybe it's the dangers of unbridled technology, or the risks, or the rampant spread of pollution, or even just the importance of forgiveness, right? Those are all different messages. And if you think this way, which it's hard for me to run through an example because I very much don't, but talking with some people who do, they seem to then move on to, again, building the things that will allow that message to come across, both in the world and out of the world. So if it's a story about forgiveness, creating situations where there's lots of people actively fighting and lots of terrible things that have already happened. Basically, they're building stuff up so that there's lots of setup for conflict, animosity, and resentment, which gives them an entire world just filled with places that people can learn to forgive. And then they can pick the ones that they're most interested in and start building out characters around those concepts and around those things. From there, they can start pulling in magic to either deal with the forgiveness itself, depending on whether you want to use the magic to mirror, to support your argument or stand in opposition to your argument or serve as a reflection to your argument. Like it might be that the magic is powerful but incredibly dangerous to yourself, and it's only through the forgiveness that the danger goes away. Maybe you also lose the magic. Don't know. It could go a variety of ways. But that is the hardest one. But it often, coming from this angle, from the people I've talked with, the approach vector of theme and argument seems to lead to a lot of metaphors and allegories. This does run the risk of being too subtle. Like it can go in two extremes. You may run the risk of being too subtle because you have built too many layers onto your metaphors and your allegories for the theme you want, or it might be way over the top and you're just smashing people over the head with the lesson. And this is the problem. I get excited about this stuff and then I completely ignore my notes because I had some of these pros and cons for the different pieces. So like that's some of the pros and cons for a theme-centered approach vector. Magic-centered, which don't think that is the best one by any means. Like that's what I do, but it comes with its own problems. For the most part, it can lead to you run the risk of having too much emphasis and too much connection and reliance on the magic itself and the mechanics of the magic system, which is good to a degree. But when everything about a book comes back to the same thing, it gets very overbearing. Whether that same thing is a character trauma, a thematic lesson, a piece of the world, a specific faction, or the magic system. Like, it's something you got to be careful with. And then when you're dealing with setting-centric approach vectors and world building, or not world building, character-centered, it is very easy to get pulled into an endless cycle of building and development with those. And that's true for all of them, but it seems to be especially true for the world and for the characters. People get so focused on understanding every aspect of their character that they're doing the Enneagram, they're doing psychological analyses, they're doing research and reading. I don't remember what the acronym is for it, but the psychological medicine book with all of the disorders. They're learning about the disorders, learning about the medications for the disorders. They're getting way more in the details than is ever going to come across in the book, and likely more than they ever need. That's one of the big problems with any of the approach vectors. So there's some good, there's some really good, because when you find it makes it's a smooth entry point. But if you're not paying attention, it can be hard to jump to the other aspects. And you can't forget the other aspects of your story. They've got to be there on some level or another. So that is what approach vectors are and kind of what they can do for you.
And that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was interesting. As always, you can leave questions in the comments below. I'm also going to leave some links in the description, so if you have some questions you want me to address in any of my live Q&As, or you have topics that you would like me to cover in these kind of live conversations, you can click those links, fill out the forms, and I will potentially cover your topic in one of these future live stream / video recordings. So thank you again, and whatever you do, make sure that you keep writing and stay awesome.